I never thought a lie, one careless, tiny sentence, could unravel the way I saw the world. But the night I said it, I felt something shift. The kind of shift you can't undo, no matter how much you want to. It started in the most ordinary place, a quiet corner of the bookstore where I worked part-time. The aisles smelled of paper and dust, humming faintly with the air conditioner that couldn't quite keep up with the summer heat. I was shelving a stack of hardcovers when she walked in. I'd seen her before, once or twice, but never this close. Mid-40s, confident in the way she carried herself. Not loud or demanding attention, but the sort of presence that changes the room without saying a word. Her hair fell neatly around her shoulders, a soft brown that caught the light when she turned her head. She wore a simple white blouse and jeans, nothing meant to impress, yet somehow she did anyway. She asked me for a title, something about memory. I can't even remember the name now, but her voice lingered. Low, steady, with a softness that made even the silence after feel heavy. I handed her the book, and for a moment, our fingers brushed. It was nothing, it should have been nothing, but the pause that followed, it lasted too long. "Thank you," she said, almost too quickly, tucking the book against her chest. I should have turned back to my cart. Instead, I asked, "Do you like books like this? About memory?" Her eyes lifted to mine, steady, thoughtful, a little surprised I'd asked. "I like stories that feel unfinished," she said. Then she smiled, but it wasn't a wide, easy smile. More like a private one, something she hadn't meant to show. That was when the lie slipped out. I told her I'd read the book too. I hadn't. Not even close. I just didn't want the conversation to end, didn't want her to walk away and take that quiet gravity with her. She nodded like she understood something about me I hadn't said. And maybe she did. The bookstore felt different after that, like the lights had dimmed, like the air had thickened. I found myself watching her more than I should have, the way she tilted her head slightly when she read the back cover, how she traced her thumb along the spine as if the book might bruise. When she left, she gave a small wave. Simple, polite. But my chest tightened like it meant more than it should. I told myself it was nothing. Just a customer. Just a passing moment. But that night, lying in bed, I kept replaying the way her eyes had lingered a half-second too long, the curve of that almost smile, the weight of the lie I'd told just to stay in her orbit. I didn't know how much that one lie would cost me. I only knew one thing. I couldn't stop thinking about her, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. The second time we spoke, it wasn't an accident. She came back to the store a week later, carrying the book I'd pretended to know so well. I was behind the counter, half distracted, when I looked up and saw her walking in. My stomach tightened, like it already knew I'd been waiting for her even if I'd never admitted it. She set the book gently on the counter, almost like it was something fragile. "You said you read this," she murmured, her eyes steady on me. There was no accusation in her tone, but there was something sharper, curiosity, maybe. I swallowed. "Yeah, it was good." I lied again, the words clumsy, thin. But then she sighed, just barely, as if she was tired of something that had nothing to do with me. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and leaned against the counter, not looking at me this time but at some spot far beyond. Her guard was up. I could see it in the way she crossed her arms, and the way her lips pressed together before she spoke again. "It's a little heavy, isn't it? The part's about forgetting what matters." Something in her voice cracked at that last word. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but I heard it. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. Instead, I noticed the small things, the faint blue veins on her hands, the faint tremor in her fingers when she traced the edge of the counter, the way she avoided meeting my eyes for too long. "You seem tired," I said before I could stop myself. That got her attention. She blinked at me, startled, then gave the faintest laugh. "Sharp eyes for someone your age." Her laugh wasn't full, it was quiet, strained, as though she'd forgotten how to let it out properly. But even in its weariness, it pulled me closer to her. For a moment, the bookstore felt too quiet. The air between us was charged with something unsaid. She glanced toward the door, then back at me, as though calculating if she'd stayed too long already. Then she whispered, not quite to me, not quite to herself. "Some days I wish I could forget everything." The words hung there, raw and unguarded. And just as quickly she shook her head, as though erasing them. "Anyway. Thank you." She picked up her bag, straightened her shoulders, and started to walk away. I wanted to stop her, to ask what she meant, to tell her she didn't have to erase what she just revealed. But I stayed silent, caught between the weight of my lies and the truths she hadn't meant to show. As she reached the door, she glanced back one last time, her eyes softer than before, like she'd left me a secret I wasn't supposed to keep. That look followed me long after she was gone. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just passing curiosity anymore. It was something I couldn't name, but I felt it pulling me in deeper, and I wasn't sure I could resist. It was raining the third time. Not the kind of gentle drizzle that feels romantic in movies. This was heavy, relentless, the kind that makes the world feel smaller, quieter, as if everything has to pause until the storm decides otherwise. The bookstore was closing early, and she lingered longer than usual. Most customers had already rushed out, clutching their coats above their heads, but she stayed, moving between the aisles slowly, as though she wasn't ready to go home. I pretended to straighten a shelf nearby just to stay close, watching the way the rain streaked across the glass behind her. "You'll get stuck if you wait too long," I said softly. She smiled faintly, not turning around. "Maybe that's the point." Her words hit me harder than they should have. I wanted to ask, stuck from what? From who? But I stayed quiet, because sometimes silence felt safer. When she finally came to the counter, the storm outside had only grown worse. I offered her the umbrella from behind the register, but she shook her head. "No, you'll need it when you leave." Something about her refusal felt lonely. Almost like she didn't mind walking into the rain if it meant not taking something meant for me. "You could wait here a bit longer," I suggested, almost surprising myself. She hesitated. Her hand hovered on the counter, fingers lightly tapping the wood. Then she nodded, just once, and set her bag down. The shop went still. The rain was loud against the windows, the lights buzzing faintly above us. She sat on the small bench by the front, and I leaned on the counter, not daring to move closer, though every nerve in me wanted to. Minutes passed, and in that quiet, we began to talk. Not about books this time, not about anything that mattered, but somehow, it still felt important. She told me about a place she used to visit near the coast, where the air always smelled like salt. Her voice softened when she spoke about it, as though remembering gave her relief. And then, in the lull of conversation, she glanced at me, really glanced, as if measuring something inside me. The moment stretched. My chest tightened. Words almost slipped out. "You don't have to be alone in this." But before I could, her phone buzzed. She looked down quickly, her jaw tightening. For a second, I saw her guard collapse, her eyes dark, her lips pressing together to hold back something unsaid. Then, just as fast, it was gone. She silenced the call and stuffed the phone back in her bag without a word. I didn't ask who it was. I was afraid to know. When the storm finally eased, she stood, thanking me as though I'd given her something more than just time indoors. She reached for her bag, but her hand brushed mine on the counter. It was nothing, a second, maybe less, but it sent heat rushing through me. She froze too, as if she felt it. Her eyes flicked up to mine. And for that one suspended moment, I thought the world would tilt and something irreversible would happen. But she pulled her hand back, cleared her throat, and said quietly, "Good night." And just like that, the moment collapsed, leaving me standing there, wondering if she had wanted it too, and why either of us had been brave enough to let it happen. It was later than usual when she came in that night. The store was already quiet, eyes dimmed to their softer glow, the kind that made shadows longer, corners deeper. She didn't pick up a book this time. She didn't even browse. She just walked straight to the counter and leaned against it like the weight of her own thoughts had pushed her there. For a moment neither of us spoke. I closed the register slowly, pretending I had something left to finish, but my eyes kept flicking to her. There was something different in the way she carried herself, her shoulders set, but her eyes, tired. Finally, she broke the silence. "This isn't normal, is it?" Her voice wasn't sharp, but it carried a quiet urgency, like the words had been pressing at her chest for weeks. I swallowed. My throat felt dry. "I don't know what you mean." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "You do." And I did. We both knew. The late conversations, the stolen moments stretched too long, the way silence between us always felt louder than words. I leaned forward on the counter, close enough to catch the faint scent of her perfume, something understated, clean, but warm. "Then what are we doing?" The question hung between us, heavier than I expected. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at me, really looked. Her eyes searched mine like she wanted to find a reason, an explanation, something she could hold on to make sense of it. But there wasn't one. "You're too young," she finally said, almost whispering. Not dismissive, not cruel, just a statement, as if naming the truth out loud might undo it. I wanted to laugh it off, to make it light, but the words caught in my chest. "And you're what? Too old?" Her silence was sharper than any answer. The air between us thickened. My hand rested on the counter, and for a second, I thought she might reach across it, not to take my hand, but to stop me from saying more. Instead, she pressed her lips together, her breathing slow but uneven. "It's not supposed to feel like this," she said finally, eyes dropping to the floor. I felt the words like a blade. Not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. Because if it wasn't supposed to feel like this, then it did. I wanted to tell her she wasn't alone. That I hadn't planned any of this either. That half the time, I didn't know what I was doing, only that I couldn't stay away. But instead I just stood there, staring at her, caught in the grip of a silence that said more than either of us dared. When she finally lifted her gaze back to mine, her eyes glistened with something she was too proud to let fall. And in the smallest, most fragile voice I'd ever heard from her, she whispered, "I'm afraid of what happens if we don't stop." The next time I saw her, it wasn't in the store. She called, her voice thinner than usual, asking if I could come by. I told myself I was only going because she sounded off, like she needed help, like maybe something was wrong. But the truth? I would have gone no matter what she asked. Her house was smaller than I'd imagined, tucked behind a line of hedges, neat but carrying the weight of years lived in. When she opened the door, she wasn't dressed like the woman I'd come to know. No blazer, no careful poise. Just a soft cardigan, hair loosely tied back, lines of exhaustion clear under her eyes. "Sorry," she said quickly, stepping aside, almost embarrassed. "I shouldn't have called." But I was already inside. The living room smelled faintly of coffee gone cold. A lamp glowed in the corner, its shade tilted slightly, like it had been knocked earlier and never fixed. Books were stacked in small, uneven towers. On the table, an old photo frame lay face down. She noticed me glance at it and froze, her hand hovering in the air before she slowly picked it up. I thought she'd tuck it away, but instead she turned it toward me. A younger man stared back. He couldn't have been much older than me, maybe late 20s. His arm around her, both of them laughing, faces lit with the kind of joy you don't pose for. "My husband," she said softly. The word landed heavier than I expected. Past tense. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened, but no words came out. "He died when I was 35. She continued, her voice steady but fragile. "It was sudden. One of those things that changes everything in a single day." She traced the edge of the photo frame with her thumb, not looking at me. "For a long time, I thought the worst part was losing him. But it's not. It's that I stopped believing I'd ever feel something again." Silence filled the room, thick and uneven. My chest ached, though I didn't understand why. She finally set the photo down, facing away this time. "You remind me of him," she admitted, her eyes flickering up to meet mine. Not in how you look, in the way you listen. The way you don't push when I try to pull back. My hands curled into fists at my sides, not from anger but from the sheer force of what her words stirred in me. To be seen like that, not as a boy, not as a distraction, but as a mirror to a love she once had, it shook me. I wanted to tell her I wasn't him. That I didn't want to just be a reminder. But all I managed was a quiet, almost broken whisper. Then what does that make me to you? Her answer came not in words, but in the way her breath trembled as she looked at me, and in the silence that followed, a silence that felt like both a door closing and another one barely beginning to open. The days after that night blurred together, but the memory of her words, "You remind me of him," wouldn't let go. It lingered, whispering in the spaces where silence should have been. When I found myself back at her house, I didn't remember deciding to go. The air was cool, dusk already softening the edges of the street. She opened the door before I knocked twice, as if she'd been standing there, waiting. Inside, the lamp in the corner was on again, the same one with the crooked shade. The books were still stacked high, but there was a blanket folded neatly on the couch this time, like she'd prepared for company without admitting it. We sat, not facing each other, not exactly. She curled her legs under herself, her cardigan wrapped tight, while I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. The air carried that faint hum of unsaid things, the kind of weight you almost hear more than feel. Finally she spoke. "I keep telling myself this shouldn't be happening," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "That I'm too old, that you'll regret this. That I'll ruin you." I didn't answer right away. My chest was tight, my throat stubborn. Instead, I glanced at her hands. One rested on her knee, fingers curled slightly, almost protective. The other fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve, pulling it, letting go, pulling it again. When I finally found my voice, it came softer than I expected. "Then why do you let me stay?" Her breath hitched, just enough to notice. She turned her head, not quite meeting my eyes, and for a long moment, there was only the faint hum of the lamp and the uneven rhythm of our breathing. "I don't know," she admitted. But the way her shoulders dropped, the way her lips parted without finishing the thought, it was more honest than anything else she could have said. I shifted closer. Not much. Just enough that the space between us changed, that the air felt charged in a different way. I didn't touch her. Not yet. I let the silence stretch, let it ache until it almost became unbearable. And then, almost like it wasn't her choice, or mine, her hand drifted across the cushion, hesitating only once before resting against mine. Just the slightest brush of skin against skin. No declaration, no confession, no line crossed. Just contact. It was ridiculous, how something so small could undo me. My whole body tensed, then softened, like I'd been holding my breath for weeks and finally let it out. Either of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. She leaned back slowly, her head tilting, not against my shoulder but close enough that the warmth of her presence felt undeniable. And for the first time, I stopped waiting for the moment to end. I let it be. No fairy tale. No promises. Just two people sitting together in the quiet, holding on to something fragile and terrifying, and realizing it was already too late to pretend it wasn't real. Looking back now, I think about how small it all was, the lies, the pauses, the brush of her hand on mine. They weren't the kind of things you'd call milestones in a story, but they were the things that shifted me, piece by piece, into someone I barely recognized at the time. That night, I thought I was losing myself in something dangerous. What I didn't realize was that I was finding something, too. A way of seeing her, and myself, without the armor we both wore. She was never just an older woman I shouldn't have wanted. She was someone carrying her own shadows, her own history, and yet she still made space for me. And I think, in my own way, I gave her something too. A reminder she wasn't finished. That life, even after heartbreak, could still surprise her. What changed in me was harder to explain. Maybe it was the patience she drew out of me, the way silence stopped feeling empty when she was in it. Or maybe it was the simple truth that love isn't always about timing, or logic, or even permanence. Sometimes it's just about the undeniable pull between two people, no matter how wrong it looks from the outside. We never called it love, not out loud. Maybe because giving it a name would have broken it, or maybe because it didn't need one. But I know what it was, even now. It was the way my chest tightened when I heard her laugh. The way her tired eyes still lit up when I walked through her door. The way we both kept telling ourselves this couldn't last, and then choosing, again and again, to stay in the moment anyway. She taught me that not every story ends with a declaration or a forever. Some stories end quietly, in a room lit by a crooked lamp, with two people breathing the same air, grateful for a truth too fragile to survive anywhere else. And even now, years later, when I catch myself staring too long at an empty chair, or when silence feels heavier than it should, I think of her. I think of the night I lied and how it changed everything I thought I knew about love, about timing, about myself. Maybe I did love her wrong. Maybe that's all either of us could manage. But it was real. And it will always matter to me. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?